This is a cute game with some bites, got some teeth, got some meat. But is it any good? There is no doubt Shuffle and Swing is adorable. Shuffle and Swing is a rondelle slash kind of worker placement slash area control type of game for 2 to 4 players. And actually I feel it's rude to just call it Shuffle and Swing and not by its full title, Shuffle and Swing in Their Fabulous Factory of Marvelous Musical Gadgets for Giants. It's a great title. It's a little bit of overkill, but still great. Just like the game, though a little bit of foreshadowing there. After a lengthy setup, players will take turns activating dice on these 3 different workshops. Okay, so I've since played this game several more times after writing the script for this review, and it really doesn't take all that long to set up. So here's a video of me setting up the game roughly for 1 player, assuming the other players do their own part with their cubes and scoring tokens and all that jazz. And it only took me about 3.5 minutes. So I guess you really can't call that a lengthy setup. But sometimes it's interesting because I will write down and take notes while playing games that I am reviewing and then comparing those notes later on. And sometimes my feelings on games completely change, or maybe I was completely wrong about something. Good and bad. And those 3 actions are building and then inspecting said items that were built and then getting some rest. So that way your workers are ready to work again. Because your adorable little kitty cat workers get tired and then they gotta go take a nap on your quilt. Because when you build part of one of these 3 instruments, you spend cats. And they're kind of like a currency or resource, and they then become tired and they have to take a nap. Probably a cat nap. It might actually make that subpar joke in the rulebook. I'm not sure, I'll have to look. And in order to get them back, you have to activate a die that is in the nap slash rest area. It's just so cute. The whole game's adorable. So that whole thing kind of adds to like an engine building feel during the game, and I dig it. On a player's turn, they will move one of their mouse meeples to a new location. It can be any unoccupied space, however, they do have to move. So I can maybe move my little mousey here, and then I can activate one of the dice or place one of my dice, should I choose, on one of the action wheel slices that is at that location. And the owner of the die that gets activated by the active player receives a matching cat of the color printed on that action wheel slice. So if, for instance, I put one of my dice on here, I would receive a black cat. So I just take a black cat from the supply and then add it onto my player board. Not in the quilt area, but off to the side. So if I had activated another player's die on the action wheel, that player would receive the cat token. And I know that sounds kind of silly, like why would you activate an opponent's die, giving them a resource? It actually happens more often than you would think, because the strength of the action that you take is depicted by the number of pips on the dice. And these aren't actually normal dice, they have normal pips for 1, 2, and 3, but then those dice can spin up to expert level, which the pips then have stars. So there's a 2, a 3, and a 4-star side on each one of the dice. So for instance, this space here that I moved to, there is 1 pip on my die and it's on the building action slice over there. So that means I get to take 1 building action. If I had activated the purple one, I could have took 3 building actions, which is thrice more than my singular pip. However, at this time, I don't really have the cats to take 3 building actions. So anyways, I would just put my blue die on there. I would receive a black cat, and then I can take 1 building action. So I'm looking at this instrument. I think I will build part of the violin. I will spend one of my orange cats. Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? I will spend my orange cat. I flip him face down. These are 2-sided. It's so cute. One side has a cat that's working, and then the other one has an exhausted cat. So I will put the exhausted cat face up on my quilt, showing that I have used him, and then I will take one of my markers and then place it on the spot I built. And this spot here shows the color of the cat that you need to build and then the quantity. And then that little extra emblem to the right of that acts as a reminder of the quadrants that make up the 4 different parts of the violin. And I don't score those points just yet. You only score those points when an inspector goes through and inspects or when that section of the instrument has been completed. And each one of the 3 instruments have different scoring conditions on them, and they're actually double-sided too, so that adds a little more replay value because you can just flip 1, 2, or go buck wild and flip all 3 over to their other side to play with some different scoring conditions. But once I build over there, then I just move my little cube up here as a reminder that I have built one section on the violin. And then once I have used that die spins up to the next number, in this case a regular 2-pip, and then it goes to the next available spot clockwise. So that is the build action. The rest action, say I put my die on here, then I would get another black cat from my troubles. Now I could take a value 2 rest action. That means I choose one of the rows or columns on my player board with that matching die result, and then I can take all the cats back in that row or column. So I use this 2-pip, so that means I look at the row or column 2, and that means I could take this orange cat back. And then again, this die would spin up to a normal pip 3 and go to the next space clockwise. And then say it's my next turn again, maybe I move into the same area, so then maybe I continue the work on the violin, which you will never really do this, and you'll have to go to different locations, because if you notice, this location here gives you black cats, but you can't spin the black cats here at that location. And these action slices here give you orange cats, but you can't spin the orange cats at that location. And then you guessed it, this one here gives you gray cats, but you can't spin the gray cats to build at that section. So it forces you to move around the board. But let's say I move my mouse here and then I put my blue die there, that gives me another black cat. I've got a ton of black cats. So then I would get a power 3 inspector. So then I can move the inspector mouse out onto the violin, and I can move him 3 spaces. And every space he lands on that has been built, the person who built that space will get those points. The inspector does stay out there once he's been placed on an instrument, he doesn't come back. The blue player would score 1 point. For here, I did give the yellow player 1 point, but here I would actually get 4 points, because in addition to when you build these parts of the instrument, there are upgrades like these weird little circle pieces, and you can use those to upgrade one of the parts that you built. Basically, it just acts as like an extra piece that you've built onto that instrument, which is great for having majority of pieces when one of the instruments gets completed. And when the inspector goes there, it basically doubles the printed score that's on there. So in this case, I would score 2, 4, 5 victory points. Take my 5 victory points, let's go. And you may have noticed that this 3 on the die has a weird square thing around it, and that is a reminder that when you use that die, after you've taken your turn and you go to spin that up, there's no 4. There's no regular 4 pip on there. So it becomes an experience, expert. Duh. It becomes an expert die. And when a die becomes an expert die, it doesn't just go clockwise to the next empty die space. It actually goes to one of the adjacent supervisor slots, I think that's what they call them, adjacent to that location. That is important because when your mouse moves over it, you get that supervisor die back, and you get to take 2 what the game calls brag actions. Because yes, it's important to build, but you gotta brag about it too. And you get to choose which instruments you want to brag on, or you can brag on the same instrument. So in this case, I've built on here 3 times. So actually my marker should be here, which is a thing that you will always forget to do and adjust. Anyways, I get 2 brag actions, so maybe I'll move up 2 on that space. And this is extremely important to do because the game's designed that you kind of got to balance your building with your bragging, because at the end of the game you will score points equal to the lower of the 2 on each instrument. So for instance, say I bragged a little bit about my buildings on the violin, but I built a ton on the violin. In this case, I would not get the 23 points, I would only get the 15 points because I didn't brag enough. I just love this theme. I do. I like this game. I would like to pause for just a moment and mention that this was a preview copy provided by the publisher, but all the thoughts and opinions in this video are my own. And as always, try clicking that subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and thanks for watching. And speaking of instruments being built by the end of the game ends when 2 of the 3 instruments have been completely built. And the instrument that did not get completed, possibly, perhaps, I've seen it go both ways actually, where all 3 instruments ended up getting built, but I've also seen it where one totally got neglected. The instrument that did not get completely built, the player who bragged the least about it will actually lose 2 victory points per space that is not completed. I actually lost 18 points one game and totally came in last place by neglecting to build on one instrument. Actually, in hindsight, I guess if I had just bragged enough, it would have been okay. And speaking of bragging, when you brag on each one of these different instruments, they also give you tokens that you can use to make some of your actions more powerful. For instance, these awesome milk tiles are dope because when you take the rest action, you can spin one of these to take not one, nay, both the row and column matching the die result. So these will get you so many more cats back when you use them. Thematically, that kind of makes sense. And the cheese is cool too, because when you're moving the instructor, you can use this to skip over spaces. So if I was the blue player inspecting here, I could just put blip, that little piece of cheese down there and skip over that spot and not give yellow any points, because screw yellow. Or is it even yellow, safety yellow, green? I don't know. Leave a comment down below on what color you think that is. That trick always worked. Never. And then over here are ladders. Ladders allow you to use a cat as if it was a different color, and it also allows you to upgrade other people's pieces that they build. So you can put one of your little clear upgrade things around someone's marker that you didn't build. And that is Shuffle and Swing in a nutshell. I'm sorry, what I meant to say is that is Shuffle and Swing in their fabulous factory of marvelous musical gadgets for giants. First take. This game is adorable. I love the theme, your little mice moving around, getting cats to build instruments, and the art on the board is just beautiful. Busy as all get out, but it looks really nice on the table. And I really appreciate all the details on the art, such as the cat tokens having one side of them working and the other side resting. The little mouse meeples, those are adorable as well. And the dice are really nice too. They have like the etching, it's not just printed on there. They feel solid, they are easy to read. They have a nice weight to them. I mean, you don't roll them, but they still feel nice when you handle them. As far as production, everything is pretty sweet. I will say the player mats, they're fine. They're just a thick cardstock. It would have been kind of cool if they were maybe thicker cardboard, but it doesn't really affect the gameplay at all. And those acrylic tokens that you place on the board when you build stuff, those are pretty neat. They're satisfying. They got like a nice clack to them. I almost feel like they don't quite maybe fit the rest of the aesthetic of the rest of the game, but they are nice and they function well, so why not? But let's go back to the art on the board though. While I do love the art on the board is busy. Your first play of this, it can make it a little distracting, and actually kind of the overall graphic design of it, I feel isn't very forgiving for people during their first play or two. Largely because there's just so much going on the board and so much visually to look at while you're playing the game. For instance, your player mats. You use your cat, and then when he's exhausted, you put him on the quilt. So there's a whole big quilt there, but you can only put your cats on the colored end spaces. Sure, there's a slightly thicker black line dividing them, but almost everybody doesn't notice that their first time playing, and they just naturally want to start placing their cats maybe in the upper left-hand corner and just kind of work their way that way, but those are actually the spots you can't use. You only have the 10 colored spots on your quilt to place your cats. And then on the instruments, there's the building requirements on there. There's the symbol that has the color of the cat, so that's cool. It's color blind friendly, I guess. And I do kind of wish that maybe they had used 2 colors other than black and gray. So there's kind of a lot of iconography on each one of those instrument sections. There's the type of cat, there's the quantity of cats needed, and then there will be an icon showing which section of the instrument that location belongs to. Which I feel that it kind of is unnecessary on some of the instruments because there's already a big thick black line connecting them. But then also too, some players would be like, well then what's with the white line? And then you have to tell them, well, that white line is also another track where the inspector can move around on the instrument being built. But overall, they certainly chose fashion over function. But with repeated plays, you kind of get used to it and it doesn't really affect the gameplay at all. But just be warned though, your first game or two of this, you will probably be distracted, and there is, I don't want to say a lot of admin, but no one ever remembers to move their building block up alongside the brag track. Which brings me to another point. I wonder if there was a way they could have fit on the instrument boards a space for keeping track of how many spaces you built, instead of placing the cubes off of the board alongside it. Kind of a bizarre graphical decision. So at first I did kind of find it to be a tough teach. I mean, the rules are fine, the rulebook is pretty clear, and there's only 3 actions. You're building, inspecting, or resting, but it was a little bit tougher of a teach than I anticipated. Maybe that's because the aesthetic of the game looks kind of friendly, easy breezy type of game, and it's a lot heavier than I anticipated. I wouldn't call it a difficult or heavy game by any means, but definitely a lot more going on than I anticipated. But overall, it's a really fun game. I enjoy it a lot. I dig the engine building feel of getting your cats and then using them, putting them on the quilts, and then resting to gain them back. Kind of like building this bizarre army of cats to build instruments. And then there's also balancing the in-game points versus trying to build and brag on a couple of the tracks to try to get a lot of in-game points that way. And I've seen quite a few different strategies actually work out in this game. I have racked up a ton of points before by trying to build a particular section of an instrument and then just keep inspecting there and just keep moving the inspector back and forth, trying to just spamming the inspector action, gaining a lot of points during the game. But I've also seen that strategy not work whatsoever. And I was pleasantly surprised at how well the 2-player game is in this. When I saw in the rulebook the changes that had to be made for the 2-player, where you use like an NPC player that moving around the center, and then when you activate their dice, it will build one of the cheapest spots on that instrument, which is kind of actually a neat design, because you can actually use that to maybe complete and build and score parts of the instrument before your opponent can. So it almost adds even more depth to the game. So I guess to generalize this review, it is a really good game. I really enjoyed it. It is beautiful and cute as all get out. However, be patient, because your first game might be a very bumpy ride due to kind of some busyness of the board and a little bit more admin than you might be expecting. But I'm definitely adding this one to my collection. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed my plays of it, and I look forward to playing it even more. That is Shuffle and Swing. Definitely check it out.